The stars had always been quiet. In 10,000 years of space travel, the Velrani Exploration Collective had mapped over 2 million star systems. They had found life on many worlds, simple creatures that swam in methane seas, floating organisms that drifted through gas-giant atmospheres, even a few species that had developed basic tool use. But intelligent life, truly intelligent life capable of building cities and ships, was rare beyond measure. The collective itself was made of 7 species who had found each other across the long centuries. They had formed an alliance based on trade, science, and mutual protection. Together, they believed they understood the universe and its rules. They believed they knew what was possible and what was not. They were wrong. Commander Thesic stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Witness, her crystalline body catching the light of distant stars. She was Korath, a species that had evolved on a low-gravity world of silicon plains and ammonia rain. Her body was beautiful in a geometric way, all angles and facets that shifted color with her emotional state. Right now, she glowed a steady blue, the color of calm focus. "Report," she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Her sensor officer, a Mulvari named Keth, looked up from his console. The Mulvari were soft-bodied creatures, their flesh translucent and filled with bioluminescent organs. Keth's internal lights flickered with confusion. "Commander, I am having difficulty believing what I am seeing," he said. "The energy signature we detected is not coming from a planet or a star. It is coming from an artificial construct." Thesic moved closer to the main display. The image showed a dark shape against the starfield, barely visible. But the sensor readings told a different story. The object was massive, nearly 800 kilometers in diameter. It was generating power levels that rivaled small suns, and it was moving. "A ship?" Thesic asked. "Of that size? It appears so, Commander. But there is more." Keth's lights turned yellow with anxiety. "I have traced the object's origin point based on its trajectory and speed. It came from the inner region of the galaxy, from a star system we have flagged as forbidden." The observation deck fell silent. Every member of the crew knew what forbidden meant. The collective had identified certain star systems as off-limits, places where conditions were so extreme that no sane species would ever evolve there. These were the death worlds, planets so hostile that they existed only to kill. "Which system?" Thesic asked, though part of her did not want to know. Keth checked his readings 3 times before answering. "Sol, the 3rd planet. Classification, Class 3 Death World. Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, extreme radiation from the parent star, tectonic instability, and a gravity well of 9.8 meters per second squared." A gasp went through the crew. Class 3 was the highest danger rating. Class I worlds were merely unpleasant. Class 2 worlds were actively dangerous. But Class 3 worlds were considered impossible for intelligent life. The conditions were simply too harsh. Evolution on such worlds produced only monsters, creatures built for violence and survival at any cost. "That cannot be correct," said Thesic. "Run the calculations again." "I have run them 7 times, Commander. The result is the same. This vessel originated from Earth." Thesic felt her crystalline structure vibrate with unease. She had studied the reports on Sol 3 during her training. The planet was a nightmare. Its atmosphere contained oxygen, a gas so reactive that it could corrode metal and burn organic tissue. Its surface was covered in water, a universal solvent that dissolved nearly everything. The planet experienced constant geological violence, with earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and something called hurricanes that could level entire regions. And the life forms there were even worse. The reports spoke of predators with razor teeth and claws, of venomous creatures that could kill with a single bite, of microscopic organisms that invaded the bodies of larger beings and consumed them from within. Earth was a world at war with itself, where every living thing existed only by killing other living things. No intelligence could arise from such chaos. It was simply not possible. Yet here was a ship, larger than any the collective had ever built, bearing materials that spectral analysis confirmed came from that very world. Iron, titanium, carbon composites, elements forged in the heart of that deadly planet. "We must get closer," Thesic decided. "Maintain full sensor coverage and charge defensive systems. We approach with caution." The Eternal Witness moved forward through the void, its engines humming with carefully contained energy. As they drew nearer, the alien vessel resolved into greater detail on their screens. Thesix felt her color shift toward purple. The shade of wonder and fear combined. The ship was not elegant. Collective vessels were designed with flowing lines and efficient curves, minimizing material usage while maximizing structural integrity. This vessel looked like it had been built by beings who had never heard of such concepts. It was covered in thick armor plates, redundant systems, and what appeared to be weapons emplacements. Lots of weapons emplacements. I am detecting launch bays, Keth reported. Hundreds of them. The vessel appears to carry a fleet of smaller craft within its structure. A carrier design, Thesix said. They brought an entire navy with them. There is more, Commander. I am reading life signs aboard the main vessel. Approximately 200,000 individual organisms. 200,000. Thesix tried to process that number. The Eternal Witness carried a crew of 47. The largest collective ships held perhaps 300, but 200,000 beings, all aboard a single vessel, traveling through space for purposes unknown. Commander, said another crew member, a Thesic communications specialist named Vorn. The vessel is hailing us. Every being on the observation deck froze. This was the moment they had trained for their entire careers. First contact with an unknown species. The protocols were clear, but protocols seemed meaningless in the face of what they were encountering. On screen, Thesix commanded. The display flickered, and an image appeared. Thesix had studied Earth biology in preparation for any unlikely encounter. She recognized what she was seeing, though the reality was more unsettling than any report could convey. The being was bipedal, standing upright on two legs in the crushing gravity of its homeworld. Its body was covered in some kind of fabric, presumably for temperature regulation or cultural reasons. Its skin was a brownish shade, stretched over a skeleton of calcium and a muscular system capable of incredible force output. But it was the face that drew Thesic's attention. Two forward-facing eyes, the mark of a predator species, a nose and mouth positioned for efficient oxygen intake, and an expression that she could not read at all. The being's facial muscles arranged in some configuration that might have been threatening or welcoming or anything in between. This is the United Nations ship Prometheus, the being said. Its voice was translated automatically by the ship's systems, though the original sounds were harsh and guttural, shaped by a mouth full of bone structures that could crush and tear. I am Captain Elena Vasquez. We represent the people of Earth. We have traveled a very long way to find others like ourselves. Others who look up at the stars and wonder what is out there. Thesix took a moment to compose herself. She had to respond. The protocols demanded it. This is Commander Thesix of the Velrani Exploration Collective, she said. We represent an alliance of 7 spacefaring species. We greet you in peace and with curiosity. Peace and curiosity, Captain Vasquez repeated. The muscles around her eyes contracted slightly, and her mouth curved upward. Thesix's database identified this as a smile, a human expression of pleasure or welcome, but the sight of those teeth, white and hard and designed for processing organic matter, made several crew members step backward. We are very happy to hear that, the human continued. We have been traveling for 80 years. 3 generations of our people have been born aboard this ship, living their entire lives in space. We always hoped we would find someone else out here. We always believed we were not alone. 80 years. Thesix calculated the distance in her mind. The humans had crossed nearly a quarter of the galaxy, traveling in a straight line from their deadly homeworld into the unknown. They had no idea what they would find. They had no guarantee of success. They had simply gone. You traveled all this way without knowing if anyone existed to meet? Thesix asked. Captain Vasquez nodded, another human gesture that Thesix recognized. We had to try. Humanity has always been a species of explorers. When we ran out of places to explore on Earth, we looked to the sky. When we exhausted our own solar system, we looked further. The not knowing was difficult, but staying home and never trying would have been worse. Thesix exchanged glances with her crew. This was unprecedented. The collective species had achieved space travel only after centuries of careful development, building their capabilities step by step with the help of species who had come before. The humans had done it alone, with no guidance, no assistance, and no certainty of success. We would like to learn more about your people, Thesix said carefully. Would you permit a diplomatic delegation to visit your vessel? Another smile from the human captain. We would be honored, Commander. We have prepared quarters suitable for beings with different environmental needs. Please, come aboard. Let us begin what we hope will be a long and productive friendship." The communication ended, and Thesix turned to face her crew. Their colors and lights showed a mixture of fear, excitement, and disbelief. She understood completely. "Prepare the diplomatic shuttle," she ordered. "Full environmental suits and armed escorts. We are going aboard." Keth's lights flickered nervously. "Commander, is that wise? These beings come from a Class 3 death world. Their very existence violates everything we understand about evolution and survival. They could be dangerous beyond our ability to comprehend." "They could be," Thesix agreed. "But they have crossed the galaxy simply to say hello. They have been waiting 80 years for someone to talk to. I do not believe they have come all this way to harm us. With respect, Commander, you do not know what they believe. You do not know what drives them." Thesix moved toward the exit, her crystalline body catching the light one more time. "Then I will go and find out. That is why we are explorers, Keth. To find answers to questions we do not yet know how to ask." The diplomatic shuttle launched from the Eternal Witness an hour later, carrying Thesix and a team of 5 specialists from different collective species. As they approached the Prometheus, the true scale of the human vessel became apparent. It was not just a ship, it was a world unto itself, a mobile habitat carrying an entire civilization through the stars. Thesix saw lights in windows, suggesting living spaces within the massive structure. She saw what appeared to be parks, or green spaces, visible through transparent domes. She saw smaller vessels moving around the exterior, performing maintenance or patrol duties. The humans had not simply built a transport. They had built a home. The shuttle entered a docking bay that could have held a dozen collective cruisers with room to spare. As the bay doors closed and atmosphere flooded the space, Thesix prepared herself for what was to come. She would be among the first beings in galactic history to walk among humans, to learn their ways, to understand how a species from an impossible world had achieved the impossible. The shuttle door opened. Standing on the other side, waiting patiently, was a human female in a crisp uniform. She was smaller than Captain Vasquez but carried herself with confidence. Her forward-facing eyes met Thesix's optical sensors without flinching. "Commander Thesix," she said. "I am Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen. Welcome aboard the Prometheus. I will be your guide during your visit. Please, follow me. There is much to see, and I think you will find our species very interesting." Thesix stepped onto the human vessel, feeling the pull of artificial gravity that matched Earth standard. The weight was crushing compared to her home world, but her suit compensated automatically. She looked at the human standing before her, this being from a world of nightmares who spoke of friendship and welcome. "I believe I already find you interesting, Lieutenant Commander," Thesix said. "I look forward to learning more." Sarah Chen smiled, showing her teeth in that predator's gesture of welcome. "Then let us begin." And so, in a docking bay aboard a vessel that should not exist, crewed by a species that should not have survived, the first true meeting between humanity and the galaxy began. Neither side knew where it would lead. Neither side could predict what would come, but both sides hoped, and sometimes, hope was enough to bridge even the greatest of distances. The corridors of the Prometheus stretched before them, like the tunnels of some vast underground city. Thesix walked alongside Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, her crystalline body humming with the effort of processing everything she was seeing. Behind her, the other members of the diplomatic delegation followed in varying states of shock and wonder. "The ship is divided into 24 major sections," Chen explained as they walked. "Each section is largely self-sufficient, with its own power generation, life support, food production, and residential areas. If one section suffers a catastrophic failure, the others can seal off and continue functioning." "You designed your vessel to survive its own destruction?" asked Keth, his bioluminescent organs flickering with disbelief. Chen glanced back at the Mulvari with what seemed like amusement. "We designed it to survive anything. That is how humans think. We always ask ourselves what could go wrong, and then we plan for it. The Prometheus can lose half its sections and still maintain life support for the remaining population. We can seal bulkheads, redirect power, and reroute critical systems in minutes." Thesix noted that the corridors themselves reflected this philosophy. Every few hundred meters, thick doors stood ready to close at a moment's notice. Control panels lined the walls at regular intervals. Emergency supply stations were visible at every junction. The humans had built their ship expecting disaster and refusing to die because of it. They passed a large window that looked out onto an interior space. Thesic stopped, her optical sensors struggling to process what she was seeing. Inside the chamber was what appeared to be a forest. Trees rose toward artificial lights that mimicked a sun. Plants covered the ground in shades of green that seemed almost aggressive in their vitality. And moving among the vegetation were humans, walking on paths or sitting on benches, children running and playing in the open space. "This is Biodome 7, Chen said. "We have 12 such domes throughout the ship, each containing a different Earth ecosystem. Forests, grasslands, wetlands, even a small desert section. They provide food, oxygen generation, and psychological comfort for our people. You brought your death world with you," Thesic said quietly. Chen's expression shifted in a way that Thesic could not quite interpret. "We brought our home with us. I understand that Earth seems terrifying to you. But to us, it is beautiful. Those trees provide shade on hot days and release oxygen for us to breathe. Those flowers attract insects that pollinate our crops. Every piece of that ecosystem exists in balance with every other piece. A balance built on death and consumption," Keth pointed out. "Yes," Chen agreed without hesitation. "Life on Earth exists by consuming other life. Plants grow in soil made from dead organisms. Animals eat plants or other animals. When those animals die, their bodies feed the soil that grows new plants. It is a cycle, an endless loop of death and rebirth. We are part of that cycle, and we have made peace with it." They continued walking, deeper into the ship. Thesic noticed that the humans they passed looked at the delegation with curiosity but not fear. Some smiled and waved. Children pointed and asked questions of their parents. There was no alarm, no panic at the sight of alien beings walking through their home. "Your people do not seem afraid of us," Thesic observed. "Why would they be afraid?" Chen asked. "We have been waiting our whole lives to meet someone else. Finding you is a dream come true, not a nightmare." They entered a medical facility, where Chen had arranged for them to learn more about human biology. A doctor named Marcus Webb greeted them, a tall human with dark skin and kind eyes. He led them to a display screen showing a diagram of the human body. "I understand you have questions about our physiology," Webb said. "I will try to answer them as simply as possible." Thesic stepped forward. "Your species breathes oxygen. Our records indicate that oxygen is a highly reactive gas, corrosive to most materials, and toxic to most life forms. How do you survive?" Webb nodded as if he had expected this question. "Oxygen is dangerous, that is true. But our bodies have evolved to use that danger. We breathe in oxygen and use it to burn fuel at the cellular level, generating the energy we need to survive. The process creates waste products that we exhale. It is called respiration." "You burn fuel inside your bodies?" Keth sounded horrified. "In a sense, yes. Our metabolism is essentially a controlled combustion process. It generates heat, which is why humans maintain a constant internal temperature of approximately 37 degrees Celsius. We are warm-blooded, carrying our own heat source wherever we go." The delegation exchanged uneasy glances. The idea of beings that generated internal fire, that breathed corrosive gas and used it to power themselves, was deeply unsettling. But Webb continued his explanation with the calm demeanor of a teacher instructing students. "Our bodies are also remarkably durable," he said. "Human bones are made of calcium phosphate, a material that is both strong and flexible. We can survive falls that would shatter more rigid structures. Our skin is a self-repairing barrier that heals when damaged. Cut a human, and the wound will close on its own within days or weeks." "Self-repair?" Thesic asked. "You regenerate damaged tissue?" "To a degree, yes. We cannot regrow limbs like some Earth creatures can, but we heal remarkably well. Broken bones knit back together. Damaged organs can partially restore themselves. Even our brains have limited capacity for rewiring around injured areas." Webb showed them images of human injuries and their healing process. Cuts that closed, bruises that faded, bones that mended. The aliens watched in silence, struggling to comprehend a species that could take damage and simply recover. "There is another aspect of human biology that you should understand," Webb continued. "We are what is called persistence predators. On Earth, many predators rely on speed or strength to catch their prey. They ambush, they pounce, they kill quickly. Humans developed a different strategy. He pulled up images of ancient humans on the savannah, chasing animals across vast distances. We are not the fastest animals on Earth. We are not the strongest. But we can travel farther than almost anything else. A human can walk or run for hours, even days, without stopping. We can cover distances that would exhaust any other creature. Our ancestors hunted by following prey, until the prey simply could not run anymore. We outlasted them. You hunted through exhaustion, Thesic said slowly. You pursued your prey until it died of fatigue. Yes, and this trait has shaped our psychology as much as our biology. Humans do not give up easily. When we want something, we pursue it with patience and determination. We traveled 80 years to reach this part of space because we believed someone was out there. We did not know for certain. We simply refused to stop until we found out. The medical tour continued, revealing more details about the human body. Their immune system, which fought off microscopic invaders with chemical warfare. Their digestive system, which broke down organic matter using acids strong enough to dissolve metal. Their nervous system, which transmitted pain signals to warn of damage and pleasure signals to reward beneficial behavior. By the end, Thesic felt she was beginning to understand why humans had survived their death world. They were not merely resistant to danger. They were built to overcome it, to absorb punishment and keep moving forward, to heal and adapt and persist no matter what the universe threw at them. But there was one more aspect of human nature that she needed to understand. Something that seemed even more impossible than their physical capabilities. Tell me about your social structure, she said to Chen as they left the medical facility. How do 200,000 humans live together without conflict? Chen laughed, a short burst of sound that showed her teeth. Who said there is no conflict? Humans argue all the time. We disagree about politics, religion, art, science, the best way to prepare food. We have debates and disputes, and sometimes we even yell at each other. But you do not kill each other? Not on this ship, no. We have laws and systems to resolve our disputes peacefully. But that was not always true for our species. Human history is filled with violence, with wars that killed millions and left civilizations in ruins. Thesic felt her crystal structure vibrate with alarm. You are a violent species? Chen stopped walking and turned to face the commander directly. Her expression was serious now, her eyes meeting Thesic's optical sensors with intensity. We can be violent, she said. That capacity lives within us. Our ancestors needed it to survive on Earth, to fight off predators and compete for resources. But we have another capacity too, the capacity for cooperation, for empathy, for love. Love? The word translated imperfectly, carrying emotional weight that Thesic could not quite grasp. It is what we feel for each other, Chen explained. Humans form bonds with one another, connections that make us care about each other's well-being. Parents love their children and would die to protect them. Partners love each other and build lives together. Friends love each other and provide support in difficult times. Even strangers can feel compassion for one another, a desire to help someone they have never met. She gestured around them at the corridor, at the humans walking past, at the children playing in distant chambers. 200,000 humans live on this ship because we love each other. Not always as individuals, but as a community. We take care of each other because that is who we choose to be. The violence in our nature is still there, but we have built something stronger. We have built a society where cooperation matters more than competition, where helping others is valued more than hurting them. Thesic considered this information carefully. A species capable of terrible violence, who had chosen instead to build and cooperate. A predator species that had learned to channel its aggression into protection rather than destruction. Why did you leave Earth? She asked. If you had built such a society, why abandon it? Chen resumed walking, leading them toward another part of the ship. We did not abandon it. Earth is still there, still home to billions of humans. But we needed to grow. Our population was expanding. Our resources were being stressed. And beyond the practical reasons, we had a deeper need. The need to explore, to discover, to find out what else existed in the universe. They entered a large chamber that Thesic realized was a school. Young humans sat at desks, listening to a teacher explain mathematical concepts. The children ranged in age from very small to nearly adult. all learning together. These children were born in space, Chen said softly. They have never seen Earth except in pictures and videos. The ship is their home, the only one they have ever known. But we teach them about where we came from. We teach them our history, our mistakes, our triumphs. And we teach them that somewhere out there, they might find others to share the stars with. A young girl noticed them watching and waved enthusiastically. Thesix found herself raising a crystalline limb in response, a gesture of greeting that seemed to delight the child. She is not afraid of me, Thesix observed. Why would she be? You are the most exciting thing that has ever happened in her life. You are proof that the universe is bigger and more wonderful than she imagined. She will remember this moment forever. They spent hours touring the ship, seeing more of the human world within a world. They visited farms where food was grown in carefully maintained conditions. They saw factories where machines built and repaired equipment. They observed a hospital where injured humans received care, their remarkable bodies being helped along in their healing process. And everywhere they went, they were greeted with warmth. Humans smiled and waved, asked questions and offered answers. They were curious about the aliens, eager to learn about other species, excited at the prospect of no longer being alone in the universe. As the tour neared its end, Thesix found herself in an observation lounge with large windows looking out at the stars. Chen stood beside her, both of them silent for a moment. I do not understand your species, Thesix admitted. You come from a world that should have destroyed you. You carry violence in your nature, yet choose peace. You traveled for 80 years into the unknown, hoping to find someone to talk to. Nothing about you makes sense according to everything I have been taught. Chen smiled. And this time, Thesix could see that it was genuine, without any trace of predator's threat. Maybe that is what makes us human, she said. We do not make sense. We are walking contradictions. We are capable of terrible things and beautiful things, often in the same day. We love and hate, create and destroy, fear and hope, but in the end, we always choose to keep going. We always choose to reach for something better. She turned to look at the stars, at the vast expanse of space that still held countless mysteries. We came out here because we believed that the universe was worth exploring, that somewhere among all those stars, there was something wonderful waiting to be discovered. And now we have found you. We have found proof that we were right to hope. Thesix looked at the human beside her. This small, fragile-seeming creature from a world of nightmares, who spoke of hope as if it were the most natural thing in the universe. What do you want from us? Thesix asked. What does humanity seek from this encounter? Chen's answer was simple and immediate. Friendship, understanding, the chance to learn from you and share what we have learned, the chance to stand together and face whatever challenges the universe might bring. And if we cannot offer that, if the collective decides you are too dangerous to associate with, Chen's expression grew serious, but not threatening. Then, we will be sad. But we will not stop. We will continue exploring, continue searching, continue hoping, because that is what humans do. We never stop. Thesix felt something shift inside her crystalline structure, some new understanding taking root. These humans were not simply survivors, they were dreamers, reaching across the void with open hands and hopeful hearts. They were impossible, but they were here, and perhaps that was the most important lesson of all. The message from Commander Thesix arrived at the Velrani High Council chamber during what should have been a routine administrative session. Within minutes of its transmission, the chamber had transformed into a scene of chaos and fear that none of the assembled leaders had ever witnessed before. Councillor Veth of the Mulvari stood at the center of the vast circular room, his translucent body pulsing with agitated light. Around him, representatives from all 7 collective species argued, whispered, and gestured in their various ways of expressing distress. The holographic display above them showed the Prometheus in all its massive, impossible glory. This cannot be accurate, declared Councillor Rax of the Thesic, his chitinous limbs clicking against the floor as he moved. A vessel of that size, crewed by beings from a Class 3 death world, Commander Thesix must have made an error in her observations. I have reviewed her data 3 times, replied Councillor Yen of the Korath, her crystalline form glowing a worried shade of orange. There is no error. The humans are real. Their ship is real. And they are requesting formal contact with the collective. High Councillor Marath, eldest of the Velrani delegation, raised a tentacle for silence. The room gradually quieted. though the tension remained thick in the recycled air. Marath had served on the council for over 2 centuries, guiding the collective through dozens of crises. But nothing in his long experience had prepared him for this. "Let us review what we know," he said, his voice carrying the calm authority of long practice. "Commander Thesix has made first contact with a previously unknown species. These beings, who call themselves humans, originated from the planet designated Sol 3, a Class 3 death world. They have traveled for 80 standard years to reach this region of space, and they number approximately 200,000 individuals aboard their vessel." He paused, allowing the facts to settle over the assembled leaders. "They have expressed no hostile intent. They have welcomed our diplomatic team aboard their ship and shared information about their biology, history, and culture. Commander Thesix reports that they seem genuinely interested in peaceful relations with the collective." "Seemed genuinely interested," interrupted Admiral Koss of the militant faction, stepping forward from his position along the wall. The admiral was Thesic, a species known for their military prowess and cautious nature. His compound eyes reflected the holographic display as he spoke. "Commander Thesix has spent less than 2 days among these creatures. How can she possibly know their true intentions?" "A fair question," Marath acknowledged. "But we must consider all perspectives. The scientific faction, I believe, has been analyzing the data sent by the Eternal Witness." Chief Scientist Laura of the Hyson moved to the center of the chamber. The Hyson were tall and thin, their bodies adapted for their homeworld's low gravity and high atmospheric pressure. Laura's forearms manipulated a data tablet as she spoke. "The human ship is remarkable," she began, her voice carrying a tone of genuine amazement. "Their technology is different from ours in almost every way. Where we have developed elegant, efficient systems, they have built redundant, over-engineered ones. Their power generation is crude but incredibly robust. Their life support can sustain their population even if half the ship is destroyed. Their structural design prioritizes survival over all other considerations, as would be expected from a Deathworld species," Admiral Koss said. "They are built for conflict and destruction. Their entire evolutionary history is one of violence and death." "That is only partially accurate," Laura replied. "Yes, Earth is a violent world. Yes, humans evolved as predators. But they also developed sophisticated social structures, complex languages, and artistic traditions. Commander Thesic's reports describe a society that values cooperation, education, and what the humans call love." The word did not translate well into any collective language, and confused murmurs spread through the chamber. Laura continued, trying to explain. "It appears to be a form of strong emotional bonding between individuals. Humans feel deep attachment to their family members, their mates, their offspring, and even unrelated members of their community. This attachment motivates them to protect and care for each other, even at personal cost." "A pack-bonding instinct," said Counselor Rax dismissively. "Many predator species develop such traits to coordinate hunting. This seems to be more than that," Laura said. "The humans aboard the Prometheus have maintained their society for 3 generations without significant internal conflict. They have developed democratic systems for making decisions, educational institutions for their young, and cultural practices that emphasize mutual support. Whatever their biological origins, they have chosen to build something beyond mere survival." High Counselor Marath listened carefully, his ancient mind weighing each piece of information. The chamber had grown quieter as the scientific report continued, though the tension remained. "What of their military capabilities?" Admiral Koss asked. "Surely the scientific faction has analyzed their weapons systems." Laura's forearms shifted uncomfortably. "We have. Their weapons are concerning. Not because they are sophisticated, but because they are devastatingly direct. The humans employ kinetic weapons that accelerate solid projectiles to extreme velocities. They have nuclear devices capable of destroying entire cities, and their ship carries what appears to be a fleet of smaller combat vessels, each armed with similar weapons. They came prepared for war," Koss said grimly, "as any sensible species would when traveling into unknown territory. Or they came prepared to defend themselves," Counselor Yen countered, "which is a reasonable precaution for any explorer. We equip our own vessels with defensive systems, do we not?" The argument that followed lasted for hours. The militant faction, led by Admiral Koss, argued that the humans represented an existential threat to the collective. They were a predator species from a world designed to produce killers. Their technology, while crude, was more than capable of causing massive destruction, and they had arrived at the edge of collective space, with a population large enough to colonize new worlds. The diplomatic faction, led by Councillor Yen and supported by the Velrani delegation, argued for caution and continued engagement. The humans had made no aggressive moves. They had shared information freely. They had expressed genuine interest in peaceful relations. To respond with hostility would be to provoke the very conflict they feared. The scientific faction remained largely neutral, though Chief Scientist Laura repeatedly emphasized the potential benefits of cultural and technological exchange. The humans had developed solutions to problems that the collective had never faced. Their redundancy-focused engineering, their biological healing capabilities, their psychological resilience could all offer valuable insights. As the debate continued, new information arrived from Commander Thesix. She reported on her extended conversations with Lieutenant Commander Chen and other human officials. She described the human educational system, where children were taught to question and explore, rather than simply accept. She described their arts, their music, their literature, forms of expression that revealed a species of deep emotional complexity. And she reported something else, something that gave even the most hawkish members of the council pause. The humans knew they were frightening. They understood that their biology, their history, their very existence was terrifying to other species, and they were taking deliberate steps to minimize that fear. They moved slowly around the aliens. They explained their actions before taking them. They showed their teeth less and kept their voices soft. They were trying not to scare the collective representatives. This suggests self-awareness and empathy, Chief Scientist Laura noted. They recognize that their nature might disturb others, and they are actively working to accommodate those concerns. This is not the behavior of mindless predators. Admiral Koss was unconvinced. Or, it is the behavior of intelligent predators who know how to manipulate their prey. We cannot assume their intentions based on a few days of careful behavior. We must consider what they might do if they feel threatened, if resources become scarce, if their population continues to grow. What would you have us do? High Counselor Marith asked. Attack them without provocation. Destroy 200,000 beings, including their children, because we fear what they might do? I would have us prepare for the worst while hoping for the best, Koss replied. We should maintain a defensive posture, keep our fleets ready, and monitor the humans closely. If they prove themselves trustworthy over time, we can gradually relax our vigilance. But we cannot afford to be naive. The debate continued for 3 more days. Messages flew between the council chamber and the Eternal Witness, seeking more information, clarifying details, testing hypotheses. The humans cooperated fully, answering every question, opening every part of their ship to inspection, sharing their history with brutal honesty. They did not hide their violent past. They told the council about their wars, their atrocities, the terrible things humans had done to each other throughout their history. They explained how close they had come to destroying themselves with nuclear weapons and environmental destruction. They admitted their flaws openly, without excuse or justification. But they also told of their triumphs, the movements for peace and justice, the scientific discoveries that had transformed their understanding of the universe, the artists and philosophers who had imagined better ways to live, the ordinary people who had sacrificed for their communities, who had chosen kindness over cruelty, who had built bridges across differences that seemed impossible to overcome. We are not perfect, Captain Vasquez said in a direct address to the council. We have never claimed to be. We carry darkness within us, the legacy of our evolution on a harsh world. But we also carry light, the choice of which to embrace is one we make every day, as individuals and as a species. We have traveled across the galaxy because we chose light. We chose hope. We chose to believe that the universe held friends we had not yet met. Her image filled the council chamber, this small human female who spoke with such conviction and passion. Her forward-facing predator eyes looked directly at the assembled leaders, challenging them to see beyond their fears. We offer you our hand in friendship, she continued. We offer our knowledge, our resources, our willingness to help in whatever way we can. We ask only that you give us a chance to prove ourselves. Judge us by our actions, not by the accident of our birth. We cannot change what we evolved from, but we can choose what we evolve into. When the transmission ended, the chamber was silent. High Counselor Marath rose slowly, his ancient body showing the weight of the decision before him. "We will take a preliminary vote," he announced. "Not a final decision, but an indication of where each faction stands. Those in favor of continued peaceful engagement with the humans." Counselor Yen raised her crystalline limb, followed by the rest of the diplomatic faction and several members of the scientific faction. Chief Scientist Laura added her support after a moment of consideration. Those in favor of defensive posture and limited contact? Admiral Koss raised his appendage, joined by the core of the militant faction. Several undecided counselors reluctantly sided with them. Those in favor of preemptive military action? A handful of hardliners from the militant faction indicated support, but they were clearly a minority. Admiral Koss did not join them, despite his aggressive rhetoric. "The vote indicates support for continued engagement with appropriate caution," Marath announced. "We will establish formal diplomatic relations with the humans while maintaining our defensive capabilities. We will share limited technological and cultural information while monitoring their activities. And we will hope that Captain Vasquez speaks the truth about her species." He paused, looking around the chamber at the representatives of 7 species who had built something remarkable together over thousands of years. "The humans say they came seeking friends. Let us give them the chance to find them. But let us also remember that trust is earned through action, not words. Time will reveal the truth of their intentions." The council session ended, but the debate was far from over. In private chambers and secure communications, the various factions continued to argue their positions. The militants prepared contingency plans for war. The diplomats drafted proposals for cultural exchange. The scientists compiled lists of questions they wanted to ask human researchers. And far away, aboard the Prometheus, 200,000 humans waited to learn their fate. 3 generations who had been born among the stars, who had never seen Earth except in stories and dreams. They had found what they were looking for. They had found others in the vast darkness. Now they could only hope that those others would see them not as monsters from a death world, but as fellow travelers on the long journey through the universe. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on her bridge, looking at the stars that surrounded her ship. Somewhere among them, beings she had never met were deciding whether humanity deserved a chance. Whether the children playing in the biodomes deserved to grow up in a galaxy that welcomed them. She had done everything she could. She had opened her ship, her society, her history to scrutiny. She had been honest about the darkness in human nature while trying to show the light. Now there was nothing to do but wait. And hope, because that was what humans did. Against all odds, against all reason, against the harsh lessons of a universe that seemed designed to destroy them, they hoped. Admiral Koss stood on the command deck of the Righteous Blade, watching the stars streak past as his small fleet raced toward the human vessel. He had not received authorization for this mission. The High Council had voted for diplomatic engagement, for patience and caution, but Koss had spent his entire career studying threats to the collective, and everything about the humans screamed danger. 200,000 of them, breeding and growing, learning about collective technology and defenses through their so-called diplomatic exchanges. How long before they decided they wanted more than friendship? How long before their predator instincts overcame their diplomatic masks? Koss would not wait to find out. He had gathered 3 warships crewed by loyal officers who shared his concerns. They would arrive at the Prometheus, issue demands for surrender, and neutralize the human threat before it could grow. The council would protest, but they would eventually understand. They would thank him for his foresight. The Righteous Blade dropped out of faster-than-light travel alongside the Swift Justice and the Eternal Vigilance. The human vessel hung before them, massive and dark against the starfield. Koss felt his compound eyes widen at the sight of it. The reports had not done it justice. The thing was enormous. A moon-sized construct bristling with armor and weapons. "Open a channel to the human ship," Koss commanded. His communications officer complied, and moments later, the face of Captain Elena Vasquez appeared on the main display. She looked calm, though Koss could see the tension in the way she held her shoulders. "Admiral Koss," she said, her voice steady. "We were not expecting a visit from the collective military. Is there something we can help you with?" "You can surrender your vessel and submit to collective authority," Koss replied. "You represent a threat to galactic stability. Your population will be relocated to a supervised colony, where your activities can be monitored and controlled. Vasquez's expression did not change, but something shifted behind her eyes. Koss recognized it, though he had never seen it in a human before. It was the look of a predator assessing a threat. "I see," she said quietly. "And if we refuse, then we will be forced to take action. Your vessel, while impressive, cannot withstand the combined firepower of 3 collective warships. Surrender is your only logical option." A long moment of silence followed. Vasquez seemed to be consulting with others off-screen, though the channel remained open. When she turned back, her face was set in hard lines. "Admiral, I want you to understand something. We have spent 80 years traveling through space, hoping to find friends among the stars. We have opened our ship, our history, our culture, to the collective in good faith. We have done nothing to threaten you or anyone else. And now you come here with weapons armed, demanding that we surrender our freedom." She leaned forward, her predator eyes fixed on the camera. "We do not want to fight you. We came here seeking peace, and that is still what we want. But we will not surrender. We will not allow our children to be taken to some supervised colony where they can be controlled. If you attack us, we will defend ourselves." "You cannot win," Koss said, though a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. The human's certainty was unsettling. "Perhaps not," Vasquez agreed. "But we can make you pay a price you never imagined. Humans have been fighting for survival since we first stood upright on the savannas of Earth. We have faced predators with claws and teeth, diseases that killed millions, ice ages that should have wiped us out. We are still here. We will always be here. And we will not go quietly." Koss cut the channel and turned to his tactical officer. "Target their main power systems. We will disable them and force compliance." The 3 collective warships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams lanced through space toward the Prometheus, striking its hull in brilliant explosions of light. Koss watched with satisfaction as the impacts registered on his sensors. The satisfaction lasted approximately 2 seconds. The human ship absorbed the first barrage like a stone absorbing raindrops. Its layered armor, designed to withstand asteroid impacts and cosmic radiation, dispersed the energy across its surface. Warning lights flickered across the massive vessel, but it remained intact and functional. And then it responded. Koss had studied the theoretical capabilities of human weapons. Kinetic accelerators, nuclear devices, something called railguns that propelled solid metal at enormous velocities. But reading about them and witnessing them were very different things. The Prometheus seemed to come alive. Hundreds of weapon emplacements that had been dormant activated simultaneously. Point defense systems tracked incoming fire with machine precision, and from launch bays across the ship's surface, smaller vessels began to emerge like angry insects from a disturbed hive. The first railgun round hit the Swift Justice before Koss could give any orders. It was not an energy weapon that could be deflected or absorbed. It was a solid chunk of metal moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The round punched through the warship's shields as if they did not exist, then tore through the hull in a spray of debris and atmosphere. "Evasive action," Koss shouted. But his fleet was not designed for this kind of combat. Collective ships were built to fight other collective ships, using energy weapons and shields that followed predictable rules. The humans had no such limitations. They fought with mass and momentum, with the brutal physics of impact and penetration. The Eternal Vigilance launched a full salvo of missiles, trying to overwhelm the human defenses through sheer numbers. The Prometheus point defense systems tracked each missile individually, destroying them with focused fire before they could reach their target. The few that got through exploded against armor plating that barely registered the damage. Another railgun round struck the Vigilance, crippling its main engines. The ship began to drift, powerless and helpless. The Swift Justice was still bleeding atmosphere, its crew struggling to seal breaches and restore power. And the human fighters were closing in, fast and maneuverable, each one carrying weapons that could gut a collective vessel. Koss realized with cold certainty that he had made a terrible mistake. He had underestimated the humans, dismissed them as primitives with crude technology. But there was nothing crude about what he was witnessing. The humans fought with the efficiency of beings who had spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to kill. "Admiral," his communications officer said, voice trembling. "The human vessel is hailing us." Koss expected threats, demands for surrender, perhaps gloating over their victory. He steeled himself for whatever cruelty the predators would inflict. Captain Vasquez appeared on screen again, and her expression made Cass's compound eyes widen in confusion. She looked not triumphant, but sad. "Admiral, your fleet is disabled. You cannot win this fight. But we do not want to destroy you. We do not want to kill anyone. Stand down your weapons and allow us to render assistance to your damaged ships." Cass stared at the display, unable to process what he was hearing. "You want to help us?" "Yes. Your people are dying aboard those ships. Let us help them." "Why would you do that?" "We attacked you." Vasquez's expression softened slightly, though her eyes remained hard. "Because that is who we choose to be. We could destroy your fleet. We could kill everyone aboard. But what would that accomplish? More fear, more hatred, more reasons for your collective to see us as monsters." She shook her head slowly. "We came here to make friends, Admiral. That does not change because some of you decided to shoot first. Stand down. Let us help your wounded. And then, let us try again to build something better." Cass looked at his tactical display. The Swift Justice was losing atmosphere faster than the crew could seal breaches. The Eternal Vigilance had lost life support on 3 decks. His own ship, the Righteous Blade, had taken less damage but was now surrounded by human fighters that could destroy him at any moment. He had no choice. But more than that, he found himself wanting to believe the human, wanting to understand how a species capable of such devastating violence could choose mercy at the moment of victory. "All ships, stand down," he ordered. "Cease fire and await instructions." The next hours became legend throughout the collective. Human shuttles launched from the Prometheus, carrying emergency supplies, medical equipment, and something far more valuable: trained personnel who knew how to save lives. Human medics boarded the crippled collective vessels, moving through damaged corridors with the confidence of beings who had faced worse environments. They sealed breaches, treated wounded crew members, and stabilized critical systems. They worked alongside terrified aliens who had been taught to see them as monsters, and they did it with patience and skill. One human Marine, a large male named Sergeant Marcus Cole, personally carried 3 injured Thessic crew members from a breached compartment to safety. The Thessic were heavy, their chitinous bodies difficult to grip, and the corridor was filled with toxic gases from ruptured conduits. Cole did not hesitate. He went in, one trip at a time, until everyone was out. When asked later why he had risked his life for beings who had tried to kill his people minutes earlier, Cole seemed genuinely confused by the question. "They needed help," he said simply. "What else was I supposed to do?" Admiral Cass witnessed this himself, watching from a damage control station as human teams worked to save his ship. He saw them treating collective wounded with the same care they would show their own. He saw them sharing rations with hungry crew members, offering blankets to those in shock, speaking soft words of comfort to the dying. These were the monsters he had been so determined to destroy. These predators from a death world, with their forward-facing eyes and their terrible weapons, who responded to an unprovoked attack by risking their own lives to save their enemies. When the crisis had passed, when the dead had been honored and the wounded stabilized, Cass requested a private meeting with Captain Vasquez. She agreed, and he was transported to the Prometheus under guard. They met in her ready room, a small space decorated with images of Earth and human art. Vasquez offered him a seat and a drink of water, which he accepted with trembling hands. "I do not understand," he said finally. "We attacked you. We tried to kill your people. Why did you help us?" Vasquez was quiet for a moment, considering her words carefully. "On Earth, there is a philosophy called the Golden Rule. It exists in almost every human culture, expressed in different ways. Treat others as you wish to be treated. Help those in need. Show mercy to the defeated." She looked at him directly, her predator eyes softer now. "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived because we learned to work together, to protect each other, to extend our care beyond just our immediate family. The violence in our nature is real, Admiral, but so is this. The desire to help, to heal, to build rather than destroy." "But we were your enemies," Cass protested. "You were afraid," Vasquez replied. "I understand fear. It makes us do terrible things. But fear can be overcome. It has to be overcome, if we want to build anything lasting." She leaned forward, her voice intense. "We will protect our people, Admiral. Make no mistake about that. threaten our children, and we will fight with everything we have. But we will not become the monsters others fear we are. We refuse to let our darker nature define us. Every time we have the choice between mercy and cruelty, we will choose mercy. That is the only way to prove that we deserve to be trusted. Koss sat in silence, processing everything he had witnessed and heard. His entire understanding of the universe had been shattered and rebuilt in the span of a few hours. "I will tell the council what happened here," he said finally. "I will tell them what you did, what you chose to do." "Thank you," Vasquez said. "That is all we ask. The chance to be judged by our actions, not by our biology. The chance to show who we truly are." She stood and extended her hand, a human gesture of friendship and agreement. Koss looked at it for a long moment, at the soft skin that concealed such terrible strength. Then he reached out his own appendage and took it. "Perhaps I was wrong about your species," he admitted. Vasquez smiled, showing her teeth in that expression that Koss was beginning to recognize as genuine warmth rather than threat. "Perhaps you were," she agreed. "But you gave us the chance to prove it, and that makes you braver than you know." The news of the battle and its aftermath spread through the collective like wildfire. The images of human medics saving collective lives, of human marines carrying wounded enemies to safety, of a species choosing mercy at the moment of their greatest triumph. Everything changed, not overnight, and not completely. Fear does not disappear because of a single act of kindness. But the conversation shifted. The questions became different. Instead of asking how dangerous the humans were, people began asking what kind of beings would respond to an attack with compassion. And aboard the Prometheus, 200,000 humans continued their journey through the stars, still hoping for the friends they had always believed were out there. They had proven something important that day. Not that they were harmless, because they were not. Not that they were weak, because they had demonstrated exactly how deadly they could be. They had proven that being capable of terrible violence did not mean being defined by it. That the choice to show mercy was always available, even when revenge would be easier. That the measure of a species was not what they could do, but what they chose to do. The predators from the death world had chosen to be healers, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. 5 years had passed since the battle that changed everything. Commander Thesix stood on the observation deck of her new ship, the Unity, watching as a fleet of vessels moved in formation through open space. Half the ships bore the elegant curves of collective design. The other half displayed the blocky, armored practicality of human engineering. Together, they represented something that would have seemed impossible a decade ago. The galaxy had changed since that day when 3 warships attacked the Prometheus and discovered that monsters from death worlds could choose to be merciful. The change had not come easily or quickly. There had been debates, protests, entire political movements dedicated to keeping humans at arm's length. But the images of human medics saving collective lives had proven too powerful to ignore. The High Council had voted, after much deliberation, to offer humanity provisional membership in the collective. Not full status. Not yet. Trust was still being built, one interaction at a time. But the humans were no longer outsiders looking in. They were part of something larger, contributing their unique perspectives and capabilities to the great project of civilized existence. Thesix had requested assignment as liaison officer to the human fleet. Her superiors had been surprised by the request. Why would a promising Korath commander want to spend her career among Deathworlders? But Thesix had seen something in the humans that she could not forget, a potential that went beyond their terrifying biology. The Prometheus had continued its journey, though it no longer traveled alone. A small flotilla of collective ships accompanied it now, carrying diplomats, scientists, and curious citizens who wanted to learn more about the impossible species. Cultural exchange programs had begun, with humans visiting collective worlds and collective citizens touring the vast corridors of the human generation ship. The results had been both expected and surprising. Humans adapted to alien environments with remarkable ease, their flexible biology allowing them to survive conditions that would challenge most species. Their children learned collective languages quickly, their pattern recognition abilities proving useful for deciphering complex grammar, and their creativity, their ability to see problems from unexpected angles, had contributed to several breakthrough discoveries in fields ranging from medicine to engineering. But the surprises were what truly marked the first years of contact. Human music, with its complex rhythms and emotional depth, had become popular among several collective species. Human literature, with its exploration of moral ambiguity and personal struggle, challenged readers to consider perspectives they had never imagined, and human cooking, despite being based on the consumption of organic matter, had developed a following among adventurous aliens willing to try synthesized versions of Earth cuisine. Thesix had tried something called pizza during a cultural exchange event. She was still not certain how she felt about the experience, but she had to admit that the combination of flavors was intriguing. Today, however, was not about cultural exchange. The combined fleet was responding to a distress call from a collective colony on the edge of known space. A geological catastrophe had struck the planet, triggering earthquakes and volcanic eruptions that threatened millions of lives. The colony's own resources were overwhelmed, and they had called for help. The humans had volunteered immediately. Not because they were obligated to, not because they would gain anything from the effort. They had simply heard that people were in danger and decided to help. "All ships report ready for relief operations," said Lieutenant Commander Chen, who had become one of Thesix's closest colleagues over the past years. The human had risen through the ranks quickly, her diplomatic skills and calm demeanor making her invaluable in the complex negotiations of collective politics. "The Korath medical ships will establish field hospitals in the northern settlements," Thesix said, reviewing the operational plan. "Human engineering teams will focus on stabilizing damaged infrastructure. Food and supplies will be distributed from the central coordination point. The Prometheus is deploying all available shuttles," Chen reported. "We have 3,000 volunteers ready to assist with evacuation and rescue operations." Thesix glanced at the tactical display, watching as human shuttles launched from the massive generation ship. 3,000 volunteers from a population of 200,000. More than 1% of their entire society had chosen to risk their lives helping strangers on a world they had never seen. "Why do so many wish to help?" Thesix asked. "This planet is not their home. These people are not their family." Chen smiled. That warm expression that Thesix had learned to recognize as genuine affection rather than predatory threat. "Because they need help," she said simply. "Is there any other reason necessary?" The relief operations continued for weeks. Human rescue teams moved through collapsed buildings with their remarkable endurance, searching for survivors long after other species would have given up. Their healing bodies allowed them to work in conditions that would incapacitate collective volunteers, and their stubborn refusal to accept defeat kept them going even when hope seemed lost. They saved thousands of lives. Korath, Mulvari, Thesic, Hyson, and half a dozen other species owed their survival to humans who had traveled across the galaxy and chosen to help. But it was not just the physical rescue that mattered. Thesix observed countless small moments that revealed the true nature of human compassion. A human marine comforting a terrified Mulvari child whose parents were missing. A human doctor teaching emergency medical techniques to local volunteers. A human engineer explaining how to reinforce structures against future earthquakes. Sharing knowledge freely without asking for anything in return. One incident stood out in her memory. A school had collapsed during a secondary quake, trapping dozens of children beneath the rubble. Human rescue teams had worked for 18 hours straight, carefully removing debris and extracting survivors. By the end, they had saved every single child. The lead rescuer, a woman named Maria Santos, had emerged from the ruins carrying the last survivor, a small Korath child who had been buried the deepest. Santos was covered in dust and blood, her body showing the strain of nearly a full day without rest. But she was smiling. "Got you, little one," she had said, handing the child to waiting medical teams. "Everything is going to be okay now." The child's parents had been waiting nearby, their crystalline bodies dim with grief and fear. When they saw their daughter, still alive against all odds, they had rushed forward and embraced the human who had saved her. They had no words that could express their gratitude, so they simply held her, these alien beings touching a creature from a death world with nothing but love. Santos had hugged them back, this predator with her forward-facing eyes and her body built for violence. She had held them gently, carefully, as if they were the most precious things in the universe. "That is your family," she had said. "You take care of each other now." Thesix had watched from a distance, her own crystalline form shifting through colors she could not name. She had studied humans for years, had learned their biology and history and culture, but she was only now beginning to understand them. They were not defined by their origins. They were not limited by their evolution. They had been shaped by a death world, Yes, carrying within them the capacity for terrible violence. But they had also learned something on that harsh planet. Something that had allowed them to survive and eventually to thrive. They had learned that survival meant nothing without connection. That strength meant nothing without compassion. That the ability to destroy was meaningless compared to the ability to build. The humans had come to the stars seeking friends. And in doing so, they had shown the galaxy what friendship truly meant. Years later, Thesix stood in the biodome of the Prometheus, walking among the Earth vegetation that still seemed so alien and yet so beautiful. Beside her was Sarah Chen, now a captain in her own right, commanding a joint human collective exploration vessel. The two of them had become close friends over the years, an unlikely pairing that had surprised everyone except themselves. Thesix had found in Chen a kindred spirit, someone who shared her curiosity about the universe and her belief that different species could learn from each other. Children played in the artificial forest around them, a mixed group of humans and Korath and several other species who had been born aboard the Prometheus or the ships that now traveled with it. They chased each other through the trees, their laughter mixing in the recycled air. "Do you remember when we first met?" Chen asked, watching the children play. Thesix's crystalline body shifted to warm gold, the color of fond memories. "I remember being terrified. Your species was everything we had been taught to fear. And now?" Thesix considered the question carefully. "Now, I understand that fear was based on incomplete information. You are not what we expected. You are something far more complex and far more wonderful." A human child ran past, chasing a small animal that Thesix recognized as a dog. The creature bounded through the grass with obvious joy, its tail wagging as it played. Behind them came a Korath youngling, her crystalline form shimmering with excitement as she tried to keep up. "The children do not fear each other," Thesix observed. "They never learned to." "That is the hope," Chen agreed. "That the next generation will see cooperation and friendship as natural, not as exceptions. That they will grow up in a galaxy where species help each other simply because they can." Thesix watched as the human child stopped running, waiting for the Korath youngling to catch up. When she did, the two of them sat down together in the grass, petting the dog and chattering in a mixture of languages. "Why do humans bond so easily with other species?" Thesix asked. "Even with animals, with machines, with beings completely unlike yourselves?" Chen smiled, her predator eyes soft with emotion. "Because we evolved to need connection. On Earth, we survived by forming groups, by caring for each other, by extending our concept of family beyond just those who shared our blood. That need did not disappear when we left our planet. It just grew to include more beings." She knelt beside a small flowering plant, touching its petals gently. "We look at the universe and we see potential friends everywhere. In other species, in artificial intelligences, in life forms we have not yet imagined. We cannot help it. We are built to reach out, to connect, to love, even when that reaching out might be dangerous. Especially then, the most meaningful connections are the ones that require courage, the friendships that bridge differences which seem impossible to overcome." Thesix looked at her friend. This human, who had once seemed so alien and now felt like family. "Your species was alone for so long," she said. 80 years of traveling through empty space, hoping to find others. Did you ever despair?" Chen stood up, brushing dirt from her uniform. "Sometimes. There were dark moments when we wondered if we were the only ones, if the universe was as empty as it seemed. But we kept going. We kept hoping." "Why?" Chen's answer was simple, spoken with the conviction of absolute truth. "Because giving up would have meant betraying everything we believed in. We are humans. We endure. We persist. We refuse to accept that the darkness is all there is." She looked up at the artificial sky, at the lights that mimicked a sun that was light years away. "And we were right. We found you. We found all of you." The galaxy was not empty. It was full of friends we had not yet met. Thesix felt something warm in her crystalline core, an emotion she had learned to recognize over years of friendship with humans. "You changed everything," she said. "Your species arrived and nothing was the same afterward. The collective had to rethink its assumptions, its fears, its very understanding of what was possible. Is that a good thing?" Thesix watched the children playing, the dog running, the plants growing in this artificial forest aboard a ship traveling through the stars. "Yes," she said. "I believe it is. You showed us that beings from a death world could choose mercy, that predators could become protectors, that the most dangerous species in the galaxy might also be the most compassionate. She turned to face Chen directly, meeting those predator eyes that no longer seemed threatening at all. You showed us that the universe was not as we believed, and in doing so, you made it better. Chen smiled, that warm human expression that Thesix had grown to treasure. We could not have done it alone. You gave us a chance when many would have shot first. You judged us by our actions rather than our origins. Whatever we have contributed to the galaxy, it was made possible by your willingness to see past your fears. The two friends stood together in the garden, surrounded by life from a death world that had become a symbol of hope. Around them, the Prometheus continued its journey. No longer alone, no longer searching. They had found what they were looking for. Not just alien species to talk to, but something deeper. A purpose beyond survival. A reason for their impossible journey. They had found a galaxy that needed exactly what humanity had to offer. Not their weapons or their violence, though those remained if needed, but their compassion, their persistence, their stubborn refusal to give up on the dream of a better universe. The death world had produced something wonderful after all. Not monsters, but healers. Not conquerors, but friends. And as the stars wheeled slowly past, carrying ships from a dozen species toward a future none of them could have imagined, one truth became clear to everyone who witnessed the new age of cooperation. The galaxy had never truly been dangerous. It had simply been waiting for the right kind of dangerous to protect it. And finally, after 10,000 years of hoping, humanity had arrived. They were home.